Welcome to this special episode of the Federal's Worldly Wise, a weekly program that attempts to figure out trending international issues. The United States Donald Trump administration, since it took over office on Jan 20th this year, has hit the headlines around the world almost every single day by its actions that have stunned, if not shocked, the world. The last thing one would expect is for international students in the United States to feel the brunt of the Trump administration's unpredictability. But yes, they find themselves in the crosshairs of the administration, with their visas revoked, their stay in the US turned illegal overnight, forcing them to return to their home countries without understanding why. Reports estimate around 1,000 international students from across the world, including from India, China, other parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, suddenly turning persona non grata. These students are midway studying across an estimated 128 colleges and universities across the United States. To understand what's going on, why it is happening, and what it means for the future of higher education in the US, we have with us a specialist, Rajkamal Rao, joining us from Texas. Rao heads a consulting firm that, quoting from his website, counsels students about all things college: readiness, financial planning, selection, strategy, and most importantly, admissions. The firm has helped hundreds of student clients win admission to top colleges and universities. Welcome to the Federal Worldly Wise, Mr. Rao.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
So let's set the ball rolling. What percentage of students you counsel are from countries like India?
So I would say 100%. I do not. I mean, the only students I have are from India, or they are from Indian diaspora families in like Dubai and Estonia. We had a couple of students from Estonia, Germany, a
Mhm.
couple of students from Germany, the UK. But they're all Indian families trying to get their children to come to the US.
You know, a large number of people don't understand the rationale behind these actions against foreign students, as they don't make up big numbers, like illegal immigrants, for instance. So, what do you make of Trump's actions?
Yeah, so Trump has been, I don't know, he has had he has had to say both things in the past. Um, During the first campaign, he said things like anybody who comes here and gets a graduate degree from the United States will automatically get a green card. Now that was an extreme position, an extremely progressive position that even the Democrats wouldn't support. Um, and even now, when it comes to issues like, I know we're talking about students, but when we're talking about like H-1Bs and so on, which is also a very important consideration for millions of Indians. He has never said that he will disband H-1B or anything like that. In fact, Elon Musk, who is his very close advisor, himself hires a lot of H-1Bs in his companies. And so I would say the best way to define Trump here is that he's ambivalent. He can speak with both sides of the mouth because he understands that there are benefits to this program, but there are also costs. So he was elected. So in the 2016 campaign, what happened was that the whole campaign wasn't as MAGA based. This "Make America Great Again" was a great slogan, but um, it didn't really drive his campaign. He had other issues, but it wasn't always about this. But in the 24 campaign, it was all MAGA. It was all Make America Great Again. And what happened was, I think this is unfortunate for the Indian students, is that the Biden administration was very careless in letting millions and millions of illegal people cross the border and really create havoc in the many communities in the US. So immigrants, came into the crosshair, so to speak, of the MAGA movement, and unfortunately, the press, the very liberal press, God bless the Associated Press, their style book removed the word illegal alien and from their style guide, and and I've written about this also. All the mainstream media outlets, starting around say mid 2014-15, they began to conflate illegal immigrants with legal immigrants and call them immigrants. And so if you ask the common, if you ask any person on the street, a MAGA person on the street in the US, they don't even know that there are an alphabet soup of visas from A to Z, the F1, the L1, the H1. They don't know what a legal immigrant is, what a student visa is. You're talking about many people who have not even gone to college. I mean, the most of the MAGA base is made up of people who have not gone to college, correct? So these people don't understand, and I think the press is largely to blame, because for them, everybody is a migrant, everybody is an immigrant. There is no illegal in the definition of the Associated Press, because the AP said humans are not illegal, their behavior is illegal. So some kind of progressive justification that I think has come to haunt the Indian student.
So, what is the mood in the universities? And that is one thing. And also, we are talking about a specific and very focused group as students are in universities and colleges. So, you would still think that there is a kind of a mix up, and the people who take the decisions are all, I'm sure, educated people. They're not somebody off the street who's, taking these calls, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I know you mentioned before about 1,000 international students, right? So we also have
Yeah.
to take it. We also have to take it, in context. I think the latest Doors report said something like, I don't know, 130, 140,000 Indian students arrived in the US last year alone. So and if you think of students who come here, they come here for a 4-year undergrad program, they come here for graduate studies. So I'm thinking at any given moment, there are about 850 or 900,000 international students in the country from all countries. So 1,000 students being deported or being sent home is really, it's really a statistical error. It is a math error. It is a rounding error. But we should also not forget that over the years, our students now, our clients, they're very good, because we counsel them on ethical practices. But at least in the last 10 years, I would say that, or maybe even 15 years, many Indian students who come here, they are not entirely ethical. And so what happens is that they just want to come here. They get they get a student visa from whatever consulate. They come here, and they begin stretching the rules of their stay quite substantially. I mean, and I don't want anybody to get into trouble. I have told students here. Let me give you a simple example. If you go to any Indian restaurant today in Dallas, right? Any Indian restaurant, the people who take your order and the people who serve, they're most likely Indian students. They're all grad students. They're studying computer science at the University of Texas at Dallas, but they want to come here and work in a restaurant. to make, I don't know, $10, $15 in cash an hour. And I have, when these people come and serve us, serve my family, I tell them, be careful because you can get caught, because that is a clear violation of the, for F1 student standards. When somebody comes here, you're not supposed to work outside of campus during the first year. And even if you do work outside the campus, you have to have official approval, and it has to be in your field of work. So if you're studying computer science, it's okay to apply to get an OPT training visa and work for a company in the US after the first year, but nobody does that. If you can actually see, dozens of students. The restaurant owner hires like a van and transports these kids from a college campus and gets them to the restaurant, and they work for 8, 10, 12-hour days, uh, earning cash for which they don't pay tax. Those are all violations, and those are all technically they're all deportable. Problems, right? And the average student who comes these days, they don't even think about the consequences. They play with fire. So going back, I came here to this country in 1986. We were so scared of INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service at the time. Literally, sir, I would tell you, we used to, if there were 10 regulations in our student contract, we would follow 11 regulations because we wanted to be perfect citizens, or perfect future citizens. I don't think a lot of Indian students really, many Indian students who come here don't follow this as much. And what is happening is that in the unfortunate situations when these guys get caught, they're deported. They're technically, the issue is largely about the anti-Semitic protests at the big schools, right? Columbia and now at Harvard. So a lot of people were caught in the dragnet because they were very pro-Palestinian on the campus and so on. So the thing is, that's okay. But the thing is that the Indian students, many of them who were deported, were indeed caught for fraud.
From the reports that we have come across, even as something as minor as traffic offenses have been cited as reasons, and even assuming that an Indian student has allegedly committed some kind of a fraud or a illegal act, there is something called the due process, isn't it? I mean, in the sense that you always give an opportunity for the person to explain, or to at least there is a kind of a legal process that happens where the person who's being targeted is given an opportunity. Here, it doesn't seem to be that way. It's very abrupt, and it's almost very dictatorial like. It's not at all like a democratic country where you follow the due process and then you do what you need to do if you have done something illegal, isn't it? Isn't that the problem?
That is a very good point. The lack of due process is an issue, and the U.S. Constitution is very clear that illegal immigrants do not have due process. People who are illegal here, people who crossed the Rio Grande and who came here, they don't have due
Yeah.
process. But if you look at the big issue going on in federal court today, and even the United States Supreme Court was involved, there was a guy from a gang member from El Salvador who was illegal here, who was deported, and because he didn't have due process, essentially there is a big hue and cry to return him to the United States. The question is, how can you return an illegal alien to the United States? He's not even supposed to be here, right? But because he's not a resident of Maryland in this case. And so the thing is, You're right. So the courts have actually read more into the Constitution than the Constitution allows, which is anybody who is here, legal or illegal, is should have due process. But for our Indian students who come here, they're all here on an F1 visa, and an F1 visa is a legal visa. It has you have legal means to stay here, and therefore you're absolutely right. They deserve due process. And in the case of the anti-Semitic protests, there have been cases where these guys have been denied due process because these guys have been just detained and sent under the terrorism. So remember also that the executive authority in the US is very strong. The Constitution grants enormous powers, Article 2 powers to the presidency. And so, if a president designates through the Secretary of State that somebody is a terrorist, then due process rules do not apply. But we are not talking about terrorism cases for Indian students who work at a restaurant or who violate their terms of stay. So you're right; they're allowed due process. But what happens, though, sir, is that these people, um, they know that they're guilty. There are people who, for instance, come here with fraudulent degrees. And there was a news item recently. I don't know, it was at the Federal or where, I
Yeah.
forget. But there were, I believe, right now, the Australian government has instructed 5 states, students from 5 states, that they will no longer be allowed to apply to go to Australia. Uh, and I don't know if this report is true, but these kinds of reports are coming out because we do know that there is fraud. I'll give you a simple example. The essay process, right? One of the things where we excel is we help students write their statements of purpose, which is required for you to come to grad school. And we are very ethical. We never write the SOPs for them. We guide them. We give them literally hundreds of questions on their SOP, and we kind of question them, challenge them. You are the managing editor of a major newspaper. So you know what you do when your editors or when your reporters write a story. You don't rewrite the story for them. You question them, and you ask them to submit a better copy. That's exactly what we do as counseling, as a counseling firm. But if you go now on the internet, there are standard SOPs that are available where people simply copy and paste somebody else's SOP and put it as their own. That is a violation of the application, right? So there are rules that our Indian students repeatedly violate because they know that enforcement is lax, and they feel that the same thing can go on even here. And they are so the what I'm saying is that the good news really, Mr. Murthy, is that the Trump administration has not really expanded their net to go after students who regularly violate their terms, due process or otherwise, right? But if they did that, I'm willing to bet that tens of thousands of students will have to be deported because that is the extent of the fraud.
In this, I mean, I understand, because you are there and you are dealing with this day in and day out, about the students and what they do. But in what you're saying, isn't there a danger that we may also be conflating the people who have committed something with people who may not have committed anything at all, but still, have been targeted? So it's what I'm basically saying is that wouldn't it be presumptuous to assume that all these folks, all the students who have been, whose visas have been revoked, have committed something of some misdemeanor to result in this kind of an action? Because when their visas are revoked or their status has been terminated, they are not given any reasons why they have done that. So it's left a lot of people in the dark, and it's left to conjectures about why they may have been done, what they have done. So, I mean, unless they are told clearly that this is what you did and that's why we are deporting you. That would make things clearer, isn't it? So then we know what they have done. But now I think
Absolutely.
we're, yeah. So how do
Absolutely.
you
I would
respond to
agree
that?
with you. I would agree with you. Again, I have to look at a deportation order. I haven't seen one, but it will typically say something like, it may not, for reasons of, for reasons of security, they might say, we know that you have violated the terms of your student agreement here because you did this, and that did this might only be a few words. There may not be an explanation, and they have the power. They have the power to deport you because there is a tucked into some 1940s or 1950s statute. Congress passed a law that said that the Secretary of State has the power to revoke a visa. And when they revoke a visa, the Secretary of State will communicate that to the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees ICE, which is the Customs and Immigration Enforcement, and they can go in and they can deport. But the thing is, you're right. You're absolutely right. The due process part, I think, is an issue. Is definitely an issue. But at the same time, these people, the people who get these deportation notices, or people who even self-deport because they're afraid. See, because if you're guilty of having committed something, you know it, and so you don't really want to go and face a judge or whatever because there is always this carrot, right? The carrot is, if you self-deport, that means you're eligible to again apply at a future date and come back. But if you're caught and deported, then you won't be able to come back for 10 years. So because of that carrot, there are a lot of people will say, well, let me kind of erase this part of my life and let me head back and then let me start over again, and this time I come over clean. That's one thing. But Mr. Murthy, the thing is, nothing prevents a foreign student today from seeking a lawyer, from seeking the help. They have never said don't go to a lawyer. You have time before. I mean, you have 24 hours time, let's say, to book your flight and head to the airport. During that time, you can go to a lawyer, to an immigration attorney, and say, this is what has happened. What should I do? And have you heard, sir, of any cases where these students actually went to a lawyer and they tried to
Yes,
protest the
yes.
deportation order?
Yes, they have, and the court has also stayed their visa revocation. So that has happened. In fact, there was a report today. I think some 4 students have done that. But coming to the overall thing, the optics of the whole thing, what it basically tends to do is that around the world, the United States is historically known for the kind of quality of education it provides. It has been an aspirational issue for a lot of students around the world to go to the United States and do higher education. I mean, and you yourself are one of them. So what I'm basically trying to assess is this feeling that the US somewhere, the Trump administration is somewhere overreaching itself in a sense that the kind of damage it may cause in the long term for people to go to the US or look at the US, and they may see they may look at other alternatives. I mean, so wouldn't that be a good thing for the US itself? Because many things in the US today are a result of the opportunities that they gave foreign students to do international, for international students in universities.
That is, I kind of agree with you, but I think it's a cyclical argument, because today, if you catch a student on a street in Bangalore and ask them, you have the right to go to the US, Australia, Canada, or the UK. You have visas from all of these places, and you have admission offers from all of these. It will cost you the same amount of money, right? I would bet that 9 times out of 10, a student will say, "I'll go to the US," despite what is happening in the US. Um, the US is a huge magnet, and I do not believe that the US brand. I mean, we certainly talk about it in the press, and it makes a good story. But on at the retail level, everybody still lines up. That is the reason there are. If you want to get a student visa appointment to go to the US, you have to wait for 9 months. But to go to to get a student visa for Australia, you can probably get an appointment the same day. So the thing is, there is and the draw. To be very honest with you, and it was true for me also. The draw is not that the United States gives you a great opportunity to study, right? The average person on the street who wants to come to the US is not coming to the US to study. They're coming here because the US gives you lots of opportunities to stay back here and work and settle down, maybe get a green card and live here. If so, I will actually make a bet with you. Let us suppose that the United States removed the 1 year optional practical training visa. Let us suppose they remove that, which is the visa that most students get onto as soon as they graduate, because they get to work for a year with an employment authorization document that ultimately allows them to go get an H-1B visa, right? Let us suppose you were to remove the OPT, let us suppose you remove the feature where a grad student or a foreign student who comes here can work legally in the US for a year as they position themselves for H-1B. I'll guarantee you that the number of visas to the US will drop by more than 90%. The draw, Mr. Murthy, the draw to the US is not the education itself. And I'll tell you why. The most successful people in the US today over the last 40 or 45 years, right from my batch, they were trained at some of the best colleges in India, right? The IITs, the IIMs, and the IISCs. So, do we want to believe that the Indian education system is so good that all the IITians, they come here and they make scintillating careers for themselves? Do we want to make the assumption that our IITs are only good up until the BTech level, but once they go to the MTech, the IITs fail? No, that's not true, right? I mean, the Indian institutions can do a good job, but the draw is not the education itself. The draw is the ability of students to convert to an employment visa legally, and the draw really is, as you said, very rightly as you put, it is the aspiration. The aspiration is most young people don't want to live in India, right? They want to come to the US. Now, if I were to tell you this from the US after having been here for 40 years, I will feel like a hypocrite, right? Because why did I come here? Well, no matter how I can justify it, I mean, in 1986, when I came here, India was still under the license Raj, right? We had to wait 8 years to get a Bajaj Chetak scooter. So India is a far different country today with lots and lots of opportunities. But still, the average student who's young doesn't want to stay back and be in India, and that's because they want to live life here. And what has happened is, in the last 25 years, the supply and demand situation of students coming here, then later on converting to the H-1B, later on seeking a green card, and you know this, you've been following this, that has actually caused a lot of stress within the Indian diaspora. Today, I believe, and you can check, I think Cato Institute has reports about this. I believe it takes 85 years for somebody to get a green card.
Hmm.
85 years, that is longer than
Lifetime.
longer than a person's lifespan,
Yeah.
because that is the draw. The draw is everybody wants to come to the US. So I do not believe that no matter what the Trump administration does here, even in terms of, as you said, overreach, in terms of enforcing the laws, I do not believe that there will be a dip coming here. There might be a statistically insignificant dip, but people will still want to come here.
Yeah, I mean, we are in the initial stages of Trump. We still have 4 more years left. We don't know what are the things that are going to happen over the next 4 years. So let's wait and see. But in the meantime, a country like China, for instance, has, in fact, I saw the report this morning. they have issued about 85,000 visas for Indians in the last 1 year, and they have opened out to Indians, and they are welcoming Indians, and they are giving visas left, right, and center, and asking students to come and join the universities there. So which means that there is a great demand for educated and well-read Indians of a certain intellectual capacity, and China is probably trying to utilize this opportunity to make the most. So so maybe this is a sign that things could change. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, again, that's a great point. Japan actually opened up their visa processes to Indian students also. I'm sure, given a chance, the average Indian student on the street would go to Japan rather than China. And again, the same student, given a choice between China and the US, they will still choose the US, right? Because of the US, because of the brand of the US.
Right.
But I just remembered something that I really wanted to mention.
Sure.
And oftentimes, we forget. We forget why people do things, and I'm not again at all trying to excuse what the Trump administration is doing with regard to due process. There, I'm 100% with you. 100% with you.
Right.
That everybody has to be given a chance to defend themselves in a court of law before they can get deported. 150%, I agree with you. But I want to take you back just a few years to a few years ago, 2020. I remember this very well because I wrote an article about this for the Hindu Business Line. I used to be a columnist for the Hindu Business Line for 12 years.
Right.
And so the thing is, what happened was, these were the early months of COVID, and the Trump administration at the time, they issued an order to the various universities, including Harvard and the other schools, about studying from home. So let us step back for a second as to what happened. When COVID happened, there were, at least in the US, I know India was a little different, but in the US, what happened was that there were blanket bans about people assembling together in large numbers and all that, and people began to stay home. So if you're a student going to Harvard, let's say, and you cannot go to campus because the campus is shut down, classes still have to continue. And so a lot of classes were held online. And so students were taking Zoom classes, and they wanted to finish out the spring semester in 2020, right? Then there are lots of foreign students at Harvard. Then some bright Trump official, he said he looked through the troves and troves of immigration rules, and he said, "Oh, hold on, the student is violating the agreement that he signed, because foreign students are not supposed to study from home. They have to be on campus."
Yeah.
And so the immediate question was, are you an idiot? I mean, you cannot send students to campus because there is a pandemic going on. They cannot go to campus. You're saying they cannot study from home. Are you crazy? That was the immediate, the natural response. But that Trump administration official, he said something like, well, Congress passed a law after 9/11, because amongst the 19 hijackers who took planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon, many of them had come here as foreign students, and they had signed up to be a foreign student at some university, but they never were to be found there. They were training to become pilots in Arizona, but they were technically registered for a school in Pennsylvania or New York or something, right? Then Congress passed an anti-terrorism law that said we cannot allow students to do that. If you're a foreign student who has come to campus, that's, by the way, remember, that's when the SEVIS, SEVIS, right?
Yeah.
SEVIS was a system that was passed. And
Right.
today, what SEVIS does is, as soon as a student lands in the US, right? Let's suppose you come to Boston to go to Harvard, then as your I-94 is scanned, the immigration officer puts in an entry into the SEVIS system to say the student has arrived in Boston. Then the student goes to Harvard and registers as a foreign student with the International Student Advisor's Office. The Harvard ISO makes an entry, okay, 3 days after arrival, the student has registered at Harvard. Essentially, SEVIS tracks the student's life in the US, certainly where you are, where you go. So if the student completes a degree at Harvard, there is a service entry to say the guy graduated. And if the student gets a job at a company, because it's an OPT, that is also entered. Oh, this person is now working for, I don't know, for Infosys in Boston as a computer science programmer, whatever. But there is a record of where you are, right? At least the organizations with which you are associated. But during 9/11, there was no service. So there was no track of the people who registered, who came to the US on a student visa, but they could be anywhere. So this during COVID, this Trump guy said, well, we are simply following the law. There is a statute in the books that says that foreign students cannot study from home, because if you study from home, you could be studying from anywhere. If you're on a Zoom call, you can go to Arizona and still take the Harvard course, but then maybe you can get into doing some nasty things to the US. Anyway, this was their argument in federal district court, and Boston is a very liberal area, and all the district judges are all very liberal. They probably went to Harvard themselves. So both Harvard and MIT, they filed a suit against the Trump administration order, and in court the order was dismissed, and then the Trump administration withdrew that order to penalize students who are staying home because of COVID-19. So the thing is, so if you were to ask me, so there's got to be common sense, right? I mean, there are rules on the books, but these people also have to follow common sense. And I don't think in that sense the Trump administration followed a semblance of common sense, because what are students supposed to do? Deport themselves to wherever country because there is a pandemic? My God, the planes weren't flying, and you couldn't go back to India because India had shut down its airports. So what I'm saying is this is the problem, sir. Mr. Murthy, the problem is there are some overzealous officials in the Trump administration. I don't think President Trump is personally responsible for this. Stephen Miller is a great example. Look him up. He's the deputy White House chief of staff. He's been with Trump since he was a young student at Duke. He went to Duke, and Stephen Miller is completely radicalized as a person. He has written papers about immigration and about the negative impacts of immigration. So he has been with Trump through the 2016 administration. When Trump lost in 2020, one of the first people that Trump hired to work with him at Mar-a-Lago was Stephen Miller, and he stayed with Trump through the 4 years in a paid capacity. Stephen Miller started his own charitable organization, political organization that funded, that also did something like this. And when Trump won again, he's the kind of guy, I think Trump sees, he's the first person that Trump sees every day and the last person that Trump sees every day before he goes to bed. He's that kind of he's the Amit Shah of the US administration. And so he has lots of power. He has lots of power. And he's trying to do a lot of this, but hopefully it'll all mellow down.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Rao. That was a very enlightening point of view from you, and thank you so much. And thanks for joining the Federal for this.
Thank you for having me. It was fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.